Good morning. Welcome everyone to today's Bravo Leadership Conversation. My name is Maria Lourdes Teran, and I'm Vice President and Head of the Council of the Americas office in Miami. It is truly a pleasure to welcome all of you as we celebrate International Women's Day. Today, we have the honor to host a conversation between three distinguished business leaders and close friends of the Council of the Americas: Paula Santilli, CEO of PepsiCo Latin America; Monica Bauer, Vice President of Corporate Affairs at PepsiCo; and Patricia Menéndez-Cambó, General Counsel at Softbank Latin America. Today's program is a joint collaboration between the Council of the Americas Bravo Leadership Series and our Women's Hemispheric Network, and marks the U.S. launch of Paula and Monica's book, A Woman's Guide to Power, Presence, and Protection: 12 Rules for Gaining Credit, Respect, and the Responsibility You Deserve. Before we begin, I want to give a very great thank you to our Bravo sponsors: Bank of America, the Jeffrey Group, the AES Corporation, Mambo Latin America, Pfizer, Chubb, Greenberg Traurig, and MasterCard, as well as our media partners, America's Quarterly and CNN en Español, and also our Women's Hemispheric Network lead sponsors, Goldman Sachs and Organon. On this special day, we also send our support and solidarity to the women of Ukraine, whose strength and bravery we greatly admire. And now I welcome a very good friend of ours, Patricia Menéndez-Cambó, who will be leading today's conversation. Patty, over to you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much. It is truly an honor, and I'm quite humbled to be sitting here with Paula Santilli and Monica Bauer in connection with their launch of their book tour. Two women who do not need an introduction and have an incredible commitment to the empowerment of women. So thank you very much, and truly an honor to be here on International Women's Day. So let's get started. We want to make this a little interactive, so feel free to interject as we go along. So Monica, you have published 3 books on women and empowerment. And Paula, you've co-authored these books as well. There are a number of critical messages in your book that I think jump out at you when you look at the different stories of the women. What are the key messages, the critical messages that you were trying to highlight in those books?
Of course, Patty. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to the Council of the Americas for hosting this book launch. And happy International Women's Day to all. So I would say that what inspired us to, personally at least to me, to write the books was working in Latin America. At PepsiCo Latin America, we had a very clear vision that was, and is still, triggering social and economic growth for every single one of our markets. And when you have that vision, you understand that women are critical enablers for that purpose. And we studied women, and from my perspective, because I led the corporate affairs function and the foundation work, you see that you can do a lot and you can shape public-private partnerships to support women, and you learn a lot about Latin American women. And then we were able to learn a lot about women across the globe. And you see 3 things that are very relevant. One of them is, of course, the economic component. Once you have more women in the workforce, you will, of course, increase the GDP of any country. Second, anthropologically speaking, women are amazing. Women are passionate, women are resilient, women are hardworking, especially in many of our markets where women, like the value of obedience, of discipline is out there, and it's really helping, it really makes women very strong part of our workforce. And thirdly, and very importantly, it's that socially, every single dollar or peso in the hand of a woman goes back to the household. It goes back as medicine, as food, as an education enabler. So with that in mind, I think the inspiration came to know that if we focus on women, we will be able to trigger social and economic growth. And then the second thing that inspired me, and this is more personal, is I had the privilege of and the gift of having a coach in my life, Marty Selman, our co-author. And I always say that I have a before and after Marty. Marty was life-changing to me. And he really taught us 4 topics that are covered in each one of the books, but especially in this last one, that we believe are things that women should really embed to make sure that they can advance in their careers. So first topic, it's power, the power dynamic and being confident and feeling okay with exercising power. It's not always organic to women. Second is networking and the relevance of it. Third, very important, self-promotion. And last but not least, it's self-care. So those are the 4 large topics that we bucketed in 12 rules in the book. So with those 2 things in mind, Patty, the big inspiration or message we want to leave here is that empowered women should empower women. So we hope that with the rules, we will somehow help empowering women. And with all the stories we portray of successful women in the book, they will be able to empower other women as well.
Thank you.
So Monica said a lot in this.
You said long answer, so I followed.
Now I'll tell you a more personal story, Patricia. We decided to co-author this book. My personal motor were 2. Number 1, men don't believe me, Patricia. When I tell them I'm the CEO of PepsiCo Latin America, they don't register my job immediately. They think I do something different. And they tell me, oh, you are in the HR department. And this is real life. No, I'm the CEO of PepsiCo Latin America. And I have to explain myself once, twice, sometimes 3 times, so that it finally sinks in. Oh my God, she is the CEO. So today, for men, I want them to understand that it is normal and there's nothing, nothing miraculous about a woman in leadership in business, no? And then for women, younger women, I wrote the book because they're always asking me, how do you do it? I mean, how are you able to manage? And I'm thinking, this is, again, not a miracle. If I did it, you can do it as well, okay? And I'll tell you some of those 12 rules that Monica mentioned. I'll tell you a few secrets. I'll tell you a few, sort of tips, rules, very simple concepts that will make a huge difference to your career. And if you are strategic about them, if you practice them, I'm sure you're, standing to have a great, successful career. So that's why I wrote the book together with Marty, Jovita, and Monica here.
Well, that's very important because I think one of the things that, we have seen in the last decade is definitely much more focus on this issue of women empowerment in Latin America than there was, 10 years ago. But people still wonder, well, how, I want to do it, but I don't know how to do it. Or, and in reality, having role models like you, I think is very important. And, given your position and the impact that you have had in the region, you're not only a, co-author, you walk the walk. I mean, you employ, you have a great success record on gender parity. You have lofty goals for the future. Some of the record that you already have is something that people dream of achieving, and you're setting the bar even higher. And you're in a position where you could really impact, and bring focus into that, notwithstanding the typical unconscious bias that exists out there when someone walks in. It's a good day when they say HR or marketing, that the concept that you would be the CEO and employs over 70,000 people, I think takes some adjustment. But by doing exactly this, you're subconsciously showing people that, especially men and women in the region, that this can be done. So in your day-to-day life at work, you've incorporated in this, and so you, from a CEO perspective, how can, because people talk about this all the time, I want to have gender parity, I want to have this, but you've done it. What are the lessons that you can give other leaders in the region with respect to that, and how, and if you can you tie that to going back to your point, Monica, that women, really have a positive impact on the economy, does it have a positive impact in your business?
Yeah, definitely, Patricia. And you also have an amazing career, by the way, very challenging career, and you've done incredibly well. So here's how we run it in PepsiCo. Okay, number one, we have very clear targets. So we have a target in PepsiCo that by 2025, which for any company in the world is around the corner, no, we will have a gender parity at leadership levels. No, okay, so now we have a target. And we have a gap. We have a gap to fill that target. So what we do is we're working at 3 different areas. Number 1 is hiring. Number 2 is retention and development. No, that's the third one, development. And when we hire, we take very specific programs for each area to make sure we are feeding the leadership roles of the future with the right talent. So for example, in operations or in sales, we as a company still have a journey to a progress here. And we do everything we can do in universities, in STEM colleges, etc., to make sure that women understand that if they come to work with PepsiCo, there's a journey that will materialize in front of them. Second, retention, especially retention in a number of years that women want to become a mother, and that is a tricky part in our life where they're having ideas whether they want to go home. The cultural aspect of being a mother in Latin America is very heavy on our conscience, So that's especially where we work in their own personal development, making sure we have the right programs, flexibility, time off, and longer maternity leaves, paternity leaves as well, etc., to make sure those years are an easy transit for these beautiful leaders. And then finally, it is about inspiring and developing them. It's you can be a leader. You have a right to be a leader. Créetelo, How do you say that in English, Realmente créetelo. And you know what, Patricia? When you start to draw this picture of themselves in a leadership role, when you show them open examples like yourself, for example, then they think, oh yes, sí, claro, I can do it, And then the magic occurs because it's really magic, In Latin America, we weren't trained to be ambitious, brave, courageous, to be, a leader. We were not built in that sense. So I think we need to work a lot on building those examples and making them comprehend that it is a really fun journey, that I want everybody to have my job, Everybody should want to be a CEO. It's an amazing role. You want to be a CEO.
Well, you have really set the bar quite high in this sphere, and one of the things that I think is important is the impact that you have across across your personal organization, and the ripple effect that has on other women in the region. So when going back to your book, Monica, for a second, when you talk about the power dynamics, having an example like this really kind of explains that you have the power dynamic. How do you explain that to someone who's setting out their goals and they're saying, today is International Women's Day, we're celebrating it, and I want to be Paula, I want to be Monica. How do I convince myself that I have that power goal? And I think seeing examples like you guys is key. But that shift in the power dynamic.
I mean, I think you're touching on probably the most important part of the book, that it's exactly that, power. Because as Paula was saying, we were not necessarily brought up with that. There's these kind of like dramatic sentences. I'll say one in Spanish, for example, calladita te ves más bonita.
Yeah.
It's as bad as it gets, right? I mean, if you all your life understand that that's the mantra, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for you to then go and exercise power. And power, it's not necessarily only depending on you. It also depends on the power dynamic of the organization. So it's twofold. It's, yes, if you, of course, have female leaders who are exercising power, it helps. If you have a leader such as Paula, who also, as we describe in the book, she exercises a power with kind of leadership style versus a power over, it's much easier to participate. It's much easier to join because it's a consensus leadership style. So that helps you also have an open channel for really believing in your power and exercising it. But the other very important component is really understanding the power dynamic in the organization and making sure that at some point you might be able to feel that you're losing your power. That happened to me personally. And I was brought up in a family where my twin brother and I were raised the same way. No one ever told me, you're the one who has to get married and he's the one who has to work. It was always equal, always about meritocracy. But once I had kind of the wrong boss who was a power over guy, and I started losing my power. So that happens, that is real. So making sure that you're aware of that and that you understand the power dynamic in the organization is critical. That's why one of the big topics in the book, it's networking. It's very difficult to just sit alone and say, okay, what's happening? I mean, of course you have the vision, the mission, you can read about all those beautiful posters that we hang on the corporate walls, but that's not the power dynamic. The power dynamics of an organization are very intrinsical. So you need to have people around you. Sometimes it's your boss, your mentor, your own peers that help you navigate that power dynamic to make sure that you're out there and you have the ability to exercise it. And that sometimes it will be everything but organic to you because of how you were brought up, but that you truly believe that you can make a difference and that whatever you do will have an impact, and that at some point, if you don't exercise your power, it can be the biggest derailleur in your career.
Those are very wise words. One of the things that comes from power, that goes into the power dynamic is getting the credit you deserve. And so in an organization where you have somebody starting out, and I think one of the lessons that you talk about in the book is how to get that credit deserved. How do you do that without, and feeling comfortable, because, women are so sometimes very happy to have a seat at the table that they don't sit there and say, besides having the seat, they don't want to lose their seat, so they don't really raise their hand too much to say, well, that was really my idea. Or, lots of women operate, in organizations by building consensus to be able to have shared credit so these things happen. But it's really important to get credit for the work that you're doing, which goes to the respect. And without having a network and a support system, that's hard to do, without coming across as bossy or aggressive, which is what sometimes.
No, you're right, Patricia. Women have a deficit in terms of showing out their ideas, their value. No, we put our heads down. We do all the work in the world. We're amazing in many things in our work, but we think everybody else will notice, and it's unnecessary to speak about your credit, your ideas. That is a mistake. Nobody will notice. Okay, you have to know that you have to find the voice, the right vocabulary to be able to say, this was my accomplishment. No? And to say it loud and clear in any organization where you work or where you are included. No, so that is that is a technique, and we write about it in the book. Marty had to teach it to us, no? Marty Selman had to sit us both and say, this is how you do the credit part. You are valuable, you do this, and you have created such amount of value. Speak up, no? Say it loudly. Without arrogance, no? Women shy away from arrogance. No, we don't like arrogance, and I don't think we should. But there are ways with the right vocabulary where we have to be very specific that these were our things to be credited for.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that you guys talk about as well, is really the need, because it's a little bit easier to get credit when you have a network within your organization or external network. And sometimes it's easier, there's one path or the other. Sometimes it's easier to develop an internal network, and some organizations, there's some value to getting an external network, which ends up accelerating you within the organization. At least in my lifetime, I've seen benefits to both.
Yeah.
And so with everything that women are doing today, I completely agree with you guys. Building a network and a sponsorship program is super important for yourself. What are the tips that you tell, that you can suggest to women? What are the things that you highlight for that?
So this is like my favorite rule.
It's
I'll
also
take
my
it.
favorite.
It's also your favorite. No, but the Increíble network, no? So this is what I tell, especially women. You have to have at least 25 people inside your organization and 25 outside your organization, at least, that know you real well, that understand what you're doing, understand what moves you, and develop a really strong relationship. It has to be a strategic list of people. It's not just any group of friends. It has to be a strategic group of people, no? And what I did, I had to do this one day, is write the list very carefully and purposefully plan to meet with coffee, with a Zoom or whatever, with every one of those individuals, no? For example, if you're building a new company, what do you need? You need a lawyer, you need an accountant, you need, a person that helps you hire people. So you need to develop a relationship with those, for example, 3 different groups, no? And women don't think that way, no? Men are a lot wired in a different way, and they get it that they need a whole village to promote themselves, their career, etc. Women are like, oh, we have to work, work, work. I don't have time to build a network. I don't have time for little talk. I have to work. No, and that's not true. You have to build a network, a strategic network, before you need it. Okay, this is what Marty always tells us. You need that team to be there for you when you have the toughest, most complex problems. For that, you have to start today to create that network that will save you for the future.
Yeah, and I would just add, and yes, I love that sentence from Marty that says, whenever you need a network, it's going to be too late to build it. So invest in it. And I speak, to many of you who are young mothers, so I know, I've been there. So the only thing you want is to go back home and run and have the baby and hold him or her, right? So at some point, it's not the priority, but it is a critical investment. It's strategic. Having a group of stakeholders around you, it's going to be very important for the purposes Paula mentioned, but then for 2 others, that it's a good group of stakeholders will also help you, give you those camera checks on how you're being perceived within the organization. Remember, perception is reality, right? So if you don't know how you're perceived, if you really don't have those reality checks on you're being perceived as someone super harsh, or actually just being perceived as a functional expert, and you go into a meeting and you use such a technical argot that no one understands what you're saying, right? So all those tips from a network will really enable you, plus the power dynamic to move forward. And the final thing, because this is something that Paula and I experienced during the pandemic with many, like dozens of workshops that we gave to women in the corporate world, but also to entrepreneurs, Patty, was that many women thought, and probably still think, that the whole space for networking was canceled with the pandemic. And I would actually think it's the opposite, because now many people, it's now resuming, but in the last 2 years, people who were usually traveling were now sitting and had more time. So I invite, and we invite you to go and reach out to someone who maybe you think it's totally unachievable as part of your network. Send an email and try to set up a 15 or 20-minute Zoom meeting, and we promise that will make a difference.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's something for all of you that are listening in to, set a goal, 5, 10 people. And I think you'd be very surprised at the response that you're going to get. And I think that's a great way to start building a network. In today's environment that there's, more time for flex working from home post-pandemic and everything, what are the tools that you think that, I think that as a woman and as a mother, I think there's some time advantages to being able to have some flexibility and to conduct business, as much as we all don't like it at times on Zoom. So what are on your downtime, when you don't have that drive into work, the day that you choose to work from home, now that we're going to flex coming in and coming out, what are the 2 or 3 things that you should do to really keep your goals vis-a-vis career and networking? What are the things that you could do from home to maintain that?
No, I think these are really interesting times, Patricia, and I think these are helpful times for women going forward, no? Because clearly women were demanding flexible time before the pandemic years. And now what we have is that men also learned how interesting working from home is, no? So I think going forward, women have to be particularly watchful how they will build themselves the right exposure to the right leadership forums, for example, so that they are visible, that their voice is heard, etc. So building in today's flexible world, the right exposure is going to be very important. Number 2, we talked about the network. Number 3, it's also about being clear about your personal ambitions. No, we do not read in people's mind. So I have encountered beautiful women out there that one day told me, Paula, my ambition is to do this or that. And I'm like, wait a minute, you have to be kidding. I had no idea. Why didn't you say this before? No. So we're going to have to be very, very specific on driving those occasions. As a leader, I'm going to have to do that. But we also need women to be able to express their ambitions very openly to us leaders. No. Those are some of the things that are coming out as we progress in this hybrid world.
So what do you think? I mean, in my own personal circumstance, I took a job in Madrid, 20 years ago, and I commuted because my family couldn't move. Today, in today's world, I think the ability for people to work remotely really expands that, because one of the barriers for women is their, traditionally in the region has been their lack of mobility. Somehow historically over the last 20, 25 years, women would move with their partner as opposed to having their partner move with women. Yeah. In general, there were always exceptions to that rule. So, from that, I think it would be, something that people could aspire to not be limited by their geographic location, given all of this flexibility on remote working. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree. I'm a firm believer that these are going to be excellent years for the women out there, especially for the women in Latin America. Before, your opportunity pool was your own little fish tank, no? So you were swimming in one city and you had opportunities in that city. With this hybrid mode, you have endless opportunities, absolutely endless opportunities. So go for it, no? Go for it. Be inspired and be brave about grabbing those opportunities when they come along.
What do you think, Monica?
I think definitely great opportunities ahead. I think companies are taking them because now we're seeing many global roles not necessarily taking place in the corporate headquarters, but in other places, simply because you can connect and you can work virtually. I think there is still a small caveat that it's actually not small, that is making sure that we do that are mindful about self-care. Because one of the things that happens with remote working and in general with being at home is, and with the pandemic, is that, as you mentioned, many women went from shift 1 and 2 to shift 1, 2, and 3 because it was taking care of the house and working and then suddenly becoming teachers, right? I had to do that with a little one in K3, and guess how well he's reading now. So anyway, we have to be very mindful of setting limits and of doing something that we call in the book, practicing something that we call healthy selfishness. Selfishness usually for everyone, but probably more for women has a pretty negative connotation. We really try to switch that into, there is a healthy part of being selfish. There is a healthy part of taking care of yourself, of putting yourself before everyone else, setting limits, because if not, the level of burnout, it's impressive because it's just distance learning and Zooming all day long, but in between the children, but in between taking care of parents. But then, so I think it's that caveat that we also have to work on. And it's also very anthropological. Many of the women we interviewed in the books were raised to obey, to always say yes. We have to learn how to say no. And it's not becoming the no woman because you don't want that perception, you don't want that reputation of she always goes and says no. But there's a way to say yes with limits. So yes, of course I can take this new task if someone else helps me, or I could once I'm done with this project, right? So those kind of things are really, I think, a very important blend to this great opportunity that is virtual working. So virtual working, flexibility, making sure that we can broaden our careers beyond our borders, but always making sure that we take care of ourselves.
I think that's a very important point. I mean, I think women tend to, they're great multitaskers by nature. And if they're certainly working and, juggling multiple roles, I think that having the discipline to take time out for yourself, I know in my own personal case, is hard, because women sit there and they're faced with something and they're like, can I have this, day for myself? Or how's that going to be perceived? Or if I don't say yes to this project, am I sending a signal that, I have reached the ceiling of where I want to go? I mean, I think those are the tough things. I know a long time ago when I was practicing, I would not mention that, I had to go to my kid's school, but of course I went to my kid's school. Of course I did cupcakes. And then one day I found one of the guys there and I thought, well, they never say anything. And I felt this obligation to confess and to say, I have to leave today early and I have to do this. So because you're concerned that when you're taking care of your things, it's somehow going to be perceived as less of a commitment of what your goals are. And so what tips do you have for women in that front?
I tell them, forget the guilt, okay? Guilt does not help you, no? If you're gonna feel, oh my God, guilt, I have to go to the doctor with the kids, it doesn't really help you, no? And same thing happened to me, Patricia. I kind of discovered that men also wanted to go to the Christmas party. Men also want to decorate the cupcakes. Men also want to go see the football or soccer tournament, and it's fine that they do, no? So I usually tell women, men also have a right to see their families grow just like you do. And it will make you an even better professional when you learn how to take care of your children. It will make you a more rounded executive in so many ways you have no idea. So it's a beautiful journey. You should do it with peace of mind, with absolutely no guilt. And of course, you have to be a responsible executive. You have to be a purpose-driven executive. And you can do both things at the same time and have a life of your own. You can do that.
And I think that goes a lot into being an authentic leader, because it is a part of your life from that, which I think is helpful. Talking about men. So when we talk about building a network, I completely agree with you. I think women need to help empower other women. And I feel that's, each one of us that's sitting here, we've obviously made a conscious decision to do that. And hopefully to inspire not the three of us, but thousands of people to do the same thing so that it has an exponential effect. But the other half of the equation in gender parity is men. So how do you, what are the tips that you have and how do you engage men in this movement? Because, that men can be fabulous sponsors, men can be fabulous, can be a great network. At least I've had very, great partnerships with men throughout my career that have been very influential to me as much as women. So what do you think in today's environment we could do to get more men on this bandwagon?
I mean, first, I think that we have to reframe this agenda, right? This is not a philanthropic agenda. This is not necessarily a feminist agenda. Having women successfully inserted into the economic environment of any business or any country or any region, it's a successful business case. There are KPIs, right? There are studies from McKinsey that say how many billions of dollars would go into the GDP of so many markets if women worked. There are tons of KPIs where we see better organizational health surveys, improved quality, less absenteeism when you have women working. So I think, Patty, that the first thing is to understand that having women as part of your workforce, it's simply a good business decision. And we have to really reframe this because it's not, okay, this guy is nice and he really opens up for women. He's smart. He's not nice, right? So what can men do? I think, and I say men, more talking about leaders, because I think Paula does this because she is a good leader, not only because she's a woman. She's a smart leader, and men should probably, and many others do it the same way. That is first, trying to open for a culture that is more diverse and inclusive. And this is, again, a no-brainer because if you have diversity and you have an inclusive culture, innovation will just boom, and innovation will always be a competitive advantage, I believe, for any industry, right? The second component, Paula mentioned it again, also beforehand, that it's not only maternity leave, but also paternity leave. And that it's important because we still see those dramatic numbers where in certain countries, women take 80 up to 90% of the household chores. And then they're thankful because their husband helped. No. I mean, 50-50, right? And if that's a personal decision, if it's not 50-50, but if the company, if the private sector, the public sector offer ways for men to really be out there and take care of the children because they have flex time, because they have a paternity leave, that will make a difference. And then finally, I would say that definitely mentoring and being sponsors, it's a big part of it. I personally have had the most amazing male sponsors who can go and do the camera check and say, you were too aggressive here, etc. And they open up those doors for women leaders to thrive. And I think all of that in common, plus of course, going home, and if you have children and if you have men, here you have 3 women that together have 8 boys. Or men, right? So we don't have girls. I don't know why, but eventually, just giving that example and setting the example for the next generation to come will make also a difference. And that's, of course, something that fathers should do as well as business leaders.
So what do you think, Paula? In your organization, you have both men and women. One of the things that I think very inspiring about you is that you really do measure this on a KPI and accountability perspective, because I agree with you, Monica. All the statistics are out there that the more women that are in the workforce, the greater impact it has on the socioeconomic development of a country, the greater impact it has on the family. But and people set goals. I think we've reached the point that all companies are setting goals with respect to gender parity. It's not a men and women issue, but it's an equality issue. But not everybody gets there. You've done a great job. Like, how did you, because you're sitting at the top, you have layers all the way down. So what are the goals that you think that you can tell other CEOs out there who sincerely want to achieve what you've achieved, who sincerely want to have gender parity and have, done tone at the top, have, made the statements, but they're just not getting there?
Yeah, Patricia, I'm super lucky. I have close to 50% of my direct team is female, no? And this is the reality, the secret. When you have gender equality in any team, results are much better, okay? So I don't think anybody in Latin America or anybody in the Americas can today have the privilege of saying, no, I don't want my results to be extraordinary. I'm okay with average results. Nobody here in the Council of the Americas or anybody listening in will say, I'm okay with so-and-so, maybe mediocre results. We are all striving to do the very best we can because, among other things, we want to create a more prosperous America, right? Don't you want to create a more prosperous America?
100%.
Or, do we want, people to be able to have better lives, better education, better health, better communities? We want a better, more prosperous Americas. And one simple thing that we can do to arrive to that vision quickly, please, is to provide for gender equality, So we don't need CapEx. We don't need, super investments. We just need to put our minds together to find the best ways to drive this gender equality in every type of organization out there. The faster we do it, the more prosperous we will all be. And by the way, Patricia, we will live in a peaceful society. And I think peace today is very, very significant.
Very wise words. Over the years, I've encountered a number of people who basically say, but I'm really trying hard, but I can't do it. And I've always thought, if you don't measure, if there is no measuring of it, if you don't treat this as a KPI because it's tied to your business results and people are not accountable for achieving it, it's kind of like a good to have. And this is not, and I agree with what you were saying. This is about, good business. It's not just a social thing. It's not just a nice to have. It definitely has a direct impact on the bottom line. And if people could see it, they would appreciate it more, on top of all the socioeconomic benefits that it could have by exactly what we're saying, increasing education and increasing the investment in the family. When one of the things that you put out in your book and these stories of these amazing women are the 12 rules and how they're intertwined with the women that you interviewed. Could you spend some time talking about that? Because you went out and did all these interviews and you found the following things that were common threads. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we interviewed women all across the globe. And what we wanted to do is really to find success stories of women who somehow had used some of the things we talk about it in the book. I think that some commonalities, Patty, are it's tough out there. There were many barriers to many of them. We see many barriers in Latin America, but then, I mean, I interviewed a colleague that still had 2 arranged marriages by his father, and she was brave enough to say no, and then she married the love of her life. And it's an amazing story, and we were all crying when we heard it, but it's all still there. I think what we learned through the interviews was that there's one thing that makes a difference. That is when those women have the right platform or live in the correct ecosystem. That makes a difference. And what do I mean by that? It's either they get a scholarship, or they get the specific training they need, or they get a microcredit if they're entrepreneurs, or they live, they get to work in an environment, if they're single moms, where it's all a group of single moms who then have the schedules that allow them to take care of the kids, right? So one commonality and one call to action to all of us is, and to all the business leaders is, if we work on the right platforms, and if we provide women with the right ecosystems, the resiliency, the passion, the energy of women will make a difference.
Paula, what do you think?
I'm inspired, like Monica just described, particularly by the women at the base of the pyramid. These are women in farms, women in little stores, in villages, etc. They have an incredible spirit. They have incredible energy and force, fuerza, to rebuild and build themselves and their communities. So I admire these women, Patty, and I work for them. I want them to be visible, and I want them to be admired, and I want them to have the right ecosystem, as Monica was describing, for them to be the best they can ever in the world. So we as a company are doing exactly that. We're trying to build the right ecosystem for these super women, to be able to have them be prosperous, and in turn generate even more prosperity.
Well, you're definitely walking the talk. I mean, I did some, you have an incredible story, an incredible resume. And I was doing some research, and I found, the impact, when you go into agro, into farming, just to think about this, like women buying tractors, like just the concept of that is it's not what, when you say the word tractor, you just don't think of a woman. And when you think of farm, you don't necessarily think of a woman. And so I think it would be important to talk about that, because I found that incredibly inspiring.
It gives me the chills today. So this was Juliana, and we met her in Colombia, in Bogota. So she lives in the Valle de Cauca, somewhere like that. And she told me, with all the pride in the world, the day she walked into a bank and asked for a credit or loan to buy a tractor. And I'm like, Juliana, you did what? I mean, I'm so scared of banks. You went into the bank to ask for a loan? Did they give you a loan? Yeah, I can imagine how difficult they made it for Juliana. But she insisted, and she got the loan. She bought the tractor. You know what she did with the tractor? What would a man do with a tractor? We know he would park it in the back and use it when he needs it.
Right.
You know what Juliana did? She said, this tractor is for the use of our entire community, and it's going to make the lives of all our community a lot better. And we're going to, fix a schedule, and the tractor is going to go from here to there, to this line, to the other line. And everybody's going to have the benefit of a hard-earned, hard-working tractor, help with the lifting, et cetera, et cetera. So she created so many smiles, Patty, only because she was brave and courageous and had this vision. And thankfully, a bank gave her the credit, the loan, and she was able to materialize this dream, So those are the kinds of ecosystem that we like in PepsiCo. We like to help those trailblazers, no, that are community members, but they have a vision, no, they have a really strong, clear vision. We all need a tractor, okay? And our tractor will create prosperity for many. So I think of ourselves, we just have to put a little gasoline into the tractor, no? Because when the tractor starts moving, it creates so much prosperity that it's unbelievable. And Juliana was a really good example for all of us.
When I read that story, I got chills. And just to think, I mean, that she's sitting there and not only is she being bold enough to dream for herself, but she's also dreaming for a community and the impact that it has. And I think that's what I found so inspirational from it, that it wasn't just two-dimensional, like I want to get out. It's like, I'm going to get out. I'm going to take the whole community with me, which I thought was, I still get chills thinking about it. So when you look at all the statistics about education in women and how the numbers have increased, and you look at people that have chosen another course, so which are, you know, going into other fields like agro and things like that, you have all these women coming into the workforce. How do we keep them there, and how do we keep the light on of their dreams? You know, when you all when everybody goes to school, you have a dream. I want to do this or I want to do that. So two things and tips for those listening. One, setting the goals. Like, how do you set a goal that you believe? For starters, you need to believe you can achieve something if you don't believe you can. So don't be afraid to believe big. And the second thing is, it's a journey to go from, you know, in my profession, the legal profession, from being a first-year associate to getting to be a vice chairman of the firm. It's a journey. How do you stay there from that perspective?
We have learned that we need sustainable programs with dedicated people and dedicated resources, and we need to stick to that program for a long period of time, you know? So for example, women in agro, let me talk about, you know, I love farming. I really like farming, and I'm walking farms as much as I can. And what I see on the farms is need to provide capability building, training, especially now, Patricia, that we're going into sustainable agriculture. No? So what happens now in agriculture? We have to change the practices of the past and create new practices that are much, much better for the planet, okay? And farming is a conservative industry. Not everybody wants to change, you know? So it requires sustainable programs that stick between the company and the farming partners for a long time, so that that change materializes after a few years when they are able to see the progress and the results, no? Sometimes it's about providing financing. Other times it's about providing contract acquisition of raw materials. No, so we go out there to the farms, to female farmers, and tell them, we will buy 100% of your production, and here's the contract that says that we, PepsiCo, will buy 100% of the. These women are looking at us saying, what do you mean you're going to buy 100%? Yeah, we will buy 100% because we need those potatoes or that corn to make our products, no? Or whatever the ingredient is. Contract farming is like a novelty for many women, no? Along with the training and development. So above all, training on how to do things different. We want you to get the best possible yield from your land, because that best possible yield will make you more prosperous, and we will have the raw material to be able to manufacture our products, no? So, but it takes time, it takes effort, especially in farming. It takes very sophisticated programs that are very clear, and some patience as well.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, it's amazing the work that you're doing there. One of the things that I was also looking into was, we both share a strong commitment to, well, the three of us share a strong commitment to STEM, and I think that is going to be something that's very important to the region. I know, us here at Softbank, we're investing in women entrepreneurs throughout the region. And we're also investing in technology that's going to make some of these jobs, easier, more efficient, increase the yield, things like that. STEM has traditionally been something that has not been, very much associated with women. When you're talking to those that are listening out here, what are the key messages that you want to, for those that are going to take the challenge to go into the STEM world, what are the key messages that you want to send them?
If you're a woman, Patty, and you like facts, you like analytics, you like STEM, come to work to PepsiCo, number one, okay? Because we love women like that. I can't tell you how enlightening I've seen women in STEM connect the dots of facts, in a way that has been like, ooh, eye-opening, okay? She has the sensibility plus the fact-based mind is a super powerful combination. So go into STEM, ladies, go into STEM, because those facts will speak to you very clearly. And you will have a sensibility to catch what the facts are saying, to look at the trends, the patterns, etc., and make a positive impact in a super amazing way. So if I were going to start a career again this time, I would go into STEM, just for the fun of it.
Agreed. Monica, what do you?
I think there's one part that should come from whoever wants to study STEM and whatever else. If you want to do it, do it. I mean, my mantra has always been, you will always regret more what you didn't do than what you did. Go for it. Sometimes it's hard. It's not linear. You have here two women, and it hasn't been, I would say, just like an easy road, but you can get there. But the thing that can be done from the private sector has a lot to play here. So one of the things we're doing at PepsiCo is making sure that we connect mentors to women who are studying STEM careers while they're studying them. Because it's not only women not only wanting to study them, but then just dropping out of school before they finish. When you have a mentor or someone who really engages with you and helps you go through those rocky times, that helps. And then the other thing is just to make sure that we all spread the word that if you study a STEM career, you can do whatever you want. It's not necessarily something too technical. If you think about PepsiCo, I mean, you have finance, you have R&D, you have so many functions where you will learn, where you will be still very creative, but that the foundation of STEM skills will make a difference. So help from the private sector, and I would guess from the academic one, plus that focus on making sure that you go there, it's important. And then my final message would be, if you don't find the right ecosystem at home, if you don't find the right ecosystem that tells you, yes, of course, go, and they actually tell you the opposite, that's not a career for women, or actually you should be marrying right now. We, of course, won't say go and find another ecosystem, but find a parallel one. There are ecosystems, groups, support groups, network, where you will find a lot of people like you that will welcome you, and where you'll be able to find those coincidences and tips to move forward and follow your dream.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think, look, I'm very proud to be the GC of the Softbank Latin America Fund. We have invested billions of dollars in technology companies over the region, all of which are looking, we're very committed to gender parity, and all of which are looking for women in the STEM space. So by all means, I think it's something that women should pursue, and I agree with you. I think that, women have a knack for synthesizing a significant amount of information and connecting the dots for that. So I can't believe the time has gone by so quickly. So I really want to thank you both, Paula and Monica, for sharing such valuable insights. For those of you that have not had a chance to get their book yet, please do so. It is incredibly inspiring and very much of a guide. From that, I want to thank the audience here today at the Council of the Americas for joining us. And I want you guys to join me in a special shout out to the women in the Ukraine who are out there fighting every day alongside the men. So thank you very much. Happy International Women's Day and have a great afternoon. Do you have any
Thank you,
words?
Patricia. No, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.